All right, I think I'll go ahead and get started. I'm showing 54 people having logged in. And I am going to mute everybody but me for sound. So there are a few ground rules with this online meeting stuff I just want to go over, because some of this is going to be new for people. I've got the chat, group chat window running. I just sent a message out to everyone, just said welcome on there. So you should be able to see that and turn on the chat window. That's a really good way to communicate when we've got this many people on the meeting. So that allows me, I see the window on my other screen here at home. And so as you get questions, that's a great way to ask them. And then if you want to speak, you can chat me and then I can unmute your microphone. And just kind of be patient when we got this many people on the meeting with the audio of this stuff. So we're now at 57. So I just want to thank you all for logging in. We've had an interesting year, as you all well know. We're going to spend some time today talking about running a Legion baseball season. I've talked to a number of coaches in the last week or two. You coaches have been great. You haven't been bugging us unnecessarily. We're all mindful of what's going on, but the calls, the texts, and all of that have been fine from my standpoint. We all want to play baseball, but we want to play it in a manner that's safe and that works for our kids and our communities. I assume everybody can hear me all right. If not, put something up in the chat. We've got some folks that are calling in by phone only, so they're not seeing the screen that I have in front of you. So as I go through the agenda, I'll just read it out because they're not going to be able to see it. So that'll be a little redundant for those of you on the computer. I am going to be recording the meeting so that if everything works correctly, I should be able to share a link, and then so you can watch this later or send it on to people that might not have been able to participate in the meeting. And I'll do that as soon as we're done and put it on our Legion website somewhere and send you an email when it's up. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get in the content. I've got some introductions to make. So we've got a few of our Montana baseball people on the meeting and a few of our overall state Legion people that are very important to this program. We're fortunate enough to have our commander, Jeff Nelson, on this meeting. Jeff is our commander for the year. He's from Polson, Montana, and he's been involved with the Mission Valley Mariners program for a number of years. We also have Gary White. He's our state adjutant, and Gary has been a great friend as I've gotten into this, and he is an absolute engine for our financing and keeping our Legion program financially solid. And I appreciate both these guys, what they do for us and what they, they're on our meeting today, and I thank them for taking the time to do that. As far as baseball officials, for those that don't know me, I'm Ron. I'm the general state chairman. I also do the state A stuff and the South District stuff. Carl Hennel's on the meeting. Carl's our AA chairman. He's up in Kalispell, Montana. And we've got Todd Noose up in Canada. He's our new North District chairman. He took over for Jim Monteith, who served in that capacity for like 20 years. So Todd's new to this level, but not new to Legion baseball. I think he's been involved up there for a number of years. And then we've got a few of our Malbua umpires on the call. Craig Struble, who's up, I think he's still up in Helena, aren't you, Craig? And then Willie Stacy. Willie's up in Kalispell. I see Craig Berube just logged in. He's over in Billings, so we've got some representation from our umpires, and I'll give them an opportunity to talk as well in the meeting. So the first thing I want to talk about is team registrations, and then we'll kind of get into what Governor Bullock's doing for us to reopen the state of Montana. Get over to my next slide here. National update. So there have been rumors going around. There's fact and fiction of what's going on nationally in Montana. I talked to Steve Claude, our executive director, yesterday, and he confirmed we've had 16 states that have canceled their season so far. New Mexico is the most recent one that canceled, and that was yesterday. Most of the reasons that states cancel is because they play on high school fields, and the state or the schools are canceling their spring sports, and they're dumping all sports for the summer. So they effectively take away all of the playing facilities that teams would play in. That's the reason Washington canceled. I talked to Don Hayes shortly after they did that. That was their reason for canceling over there. I've talked to South Dakota. I've talked to Wyoming. I talked to Cody Beers yesterday down in Wyoming. They are all holding out to run a season. South Dakota will make a decision May 15th. Wyoming's about a week behind us in terms of what they're doing. I talked to some of the folks in Idaho last Sunday. They're still planning to run some kind of season. North Dakota, I think many of you saw that they canceled their season. They actually canceled it twice. Their department executive committee got together and canceled pretty much all Legion activities across the state. And that includes boys state, shooting sports, everything, including baseball. But they never talked to the baseball guys. So the baseball guys went and approached them and asked them to reconsider, which they did do that, and then they announced that the season would be canceled anyway. So as far as we know, North Dakota is done. One of my concerns with all of this, I've got a lot of concerns, but I got to let a few more guys in the meeting here. I've got a lot of concerns, but one of my big ones is just that as we get into this, the landscape of this is going to look different in different parts of our state, different counties, different health departments. We're fortunate here. We've got the support of our department executive committee and I've asked, that our Legion commander and adjutant get involved with this process, because this is certainly bigger than myself or our baseball committee. So one of my concerns is we get going and then all of a sudden our state executive committee comes in behind us and says, oh, wait a minute, we're not going to do a season. And in talking to Jeff Nelson, and I've talked to Gary a lot, that's not the case here. They're here to support us. But just so you all know that this organization is bigger than just our baseball piece, I'm going to ask Gary White to just comment on kind of the structure of what that department, which is equivalent to state executive committee, looks like for our state American Legion organization. Gary, if you could kind of fill everybody in on that.
Okay, well, it consists of 23 people. I am not one of those 23. I have no vote. I'm on that committee, but I have no vote. There are 23 voting members from all across the state. Every region is represented. So once we determine the results of this meeting and the direction that you want to go, the commander will put it before the executive committee if he believes it's necessary. It may not even be necessary to do that, but I think that we have a good chance and a good support to do the season depending on what kind of controls and checks and balances we have here today.
Thank you. We've also got one of our Canadian coaches on the line from Vauxhall that I'd like him to kind of fill us in on what's going on up in Canada, and Paul Mrazek up in Cranbrook. Both these guys, I've talked to Paul on and off through this whole thing as well. They're very up to speed on the Canadian closures, but I'd like to take a couple minutes to talk about that just so our Montana coaches realize what's going on out there and how difficult it is to even travel outside of Canada right now.
You want me to go first, Ron? It's Paul.
Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Okay, sure. So right now, Canadian, U.S. governments last week agreed to keep the borders closed to non-essential services. So the border is closed till May 20th. We don't know what they're going to do after that. Things in BC and Alberta are pretty good compared to Eastern Canada. So in British Columbia right now, we're waiting to see what they start doing on a similar thing to like a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, with opening up stores a little bit, restaurants, how they do that, letting people move around a little bit. Don't know what they're going to do with sports yet. But I think we're a little bit behind Montana. You guys have announced starting Monday, I believe in your email, sports groups with less than 10 as long as, there's separation. So we're still waiting to hear that probably in the next week or two. But if we were to open up the border, we'll see what happens and what kind of restrictions there are when we come, if we went down and played in Montana and then come back, whether they will still have the 14-day isolation in place. So that could make it, depending on what the governments decide, will dictate whether or not we'll be able to cross the border and play. Because if we can cross the border and play, but we have to isolate for 14 days when we come back, that makes it very difficult. So we're still waiting, and I'd say we're about a week behind you guys to see what the government does with opening things, starting to open up things.
Well, you're in BC, and all the other Canadian programs are over in Alberta. Are there differences provincially in what's going on, or are they same all across BC and Alberta?
So they have their same thing. Just as you have your states and your governors, we have our provinces and premiers, and they will dictate themselves. I think federally they're going to control the border. I don't know if they'll let BC open the border or Alberta open the border. Meanwhile, Ontario and Quebec are closed, or if, where they're going to let that decision make. But Alberta will decide when they want to open things up into a phase 1, 2, 3 types thing. Right now, Saskatchewan is ahead of both of Alberta and BC, and they're starting to open things up just like you guys in Montana.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that answer that?
Yep. Thanks. We've got a closed border too, because the governor has instructed us to do non-essential, the no non-essential travel. If you do leave the state, you're in quarantine when you get back. And we'll talk a little bit more on that, how that basically takes out all our away tournaments, and for, as far as teams coming into our tournaments as well. I think it's problematic at best in the early part of the season here. All right, thanks, Paul. Moving down on my screen here, K&K insurance purposes, there were rumors going around on that K&K Insurance had stopped writing policies for American Legion teams. That is not true. What is true is that if Montana decides to cancel its season, we let them know that, and then at that point they would stop selling teams insurance. So as far as our registration goes, it should be normal registrations. Normal being you go to the same sites you've been going to for years and registering your teams. The deadline's still going to be June 1 for that. The roster deadline is still June 25 for that. We could extend those dates easily because we're not qualifying teams to go to national tournaments. And I don't think national is going to care if we roster kids later into July. So we could extend that date. We're not going to figure every nuance of this out today, but at least we can get some of this stuff on the table for consideration. The one thing I am going to do in talking to K&K, they gave me kind of a template for additional waiver documentation. Let me see if I can pull that up here and put that on my screen. So I'm working on a form. Let me do this. Move this around and this around. Share my other screen. And then you should be able to see my other screen that's got a form there. It's a hold harmless waiver. She sent this to me yesterday. So I'm going to ask that our teams do this just as an additional safeguard. They have all our player participants signing this. And, you know, the bottom line is anybody can sue you over anything, but it certainly doesn't hurt, given the circumstances we're working under right now, to have our kids and families sign these things. So we're going to ask you guys to do that as you do your sign-ups and whatnot. Go back over to my other screen. Team fees, we're still processing those, and National is still processing the team fees. The national fee part of that, which I believe is $50, I think National will be doing refunds on that, and that's something I'll have to circle back on because I'm not 100% sure of that. When I talked to Cody Beers in Wyoming yesterday, he thought that was the case, and so they may be refunding that portion of your fee. If at some point we end up canceling our season, we will refund your team fees back to your respective programs. And I'll work with Gary White in his office to make sure that happens. So there's a refund opportunity with our insurance, which would be June 24th. So what I mean by that is if we were to cancel our season and notify K&K Insurance that we are canceling, they will give us reimbursements for insurance that was purchased. If we play through that date, it's my understanding we would not be eligible for reimbursement money from the insurance companies. And so we've got a lot of time to figure that out. I think the landscape of this stuff will look different considerably by mid-June, hopefully. And you know, we'll have a pretty good idea if we're going to be able to keep playing or not. So the next thing I want to talk about is Governor Bullock's plan for reopening Montana. I think most of you have been tracking this, but if not, I still want to spend a few minutes talking about it. You know, he's got 3 phases to this. Phase 1, which is effective Monday, allows youth sports to consider starting up. And he says we should avoid gathering in groups of more than 10 people. Well, should is a recommendation, but that's where we're going to go with. We will avoid gathering in more than 10. I think for baseball teams, it makes sense to me that you could have your entire team in your ballpark working in groups of 10 or less and keeping your distance between them. So my interpretation of that is, yeah, you could have more than 10 at a practice. I think you got to work with your kids and parents as far as how you get them in and out of the ballpark to keep that distancing. These boys are going to want to walk in shoulder to shoulder, carrying their bat bags, and until you get the ball and split them up, we need you to make sure that they're distance from the time they hit your parking lot to the time they leave your practices. The serious side of his order is that he goes on to say that all of these things are enforceable by the Attorney General's office, Department of Health, the county attorney, and the individual county health departments, which means we're going to kind of have A to Z in terms of who's enforcing these rules. All we need is one person in the public calling the health department in your respective county, complaining about your practice or something they see, and all of a sudden this becomes an attorney general's complaint that shuts this whole program down. So we need your cooperation to make sure that you maintain whatever guidelines the governor's giving us so that we're not causing problems that are going to work their way up to these different enforcement agencies. That these are big, powerful groups that can shut us down in a heartbeat. And so we're gonna start our season, and hopefully it all goes well. But at the same time, any one of these things could trip us up. Phase 2, which is to be determined, basically gets us to 50 people. As far as sizes, and I'm not sure what that means for game days. If you count your kids, I assume you would. By the time you have 2 teams, coaches, support group, your field crew, a few other people, you're at 40 probably, and then you got room for maybe 10 more. And we may have to run with that as we start games, just to be compliant. And so we'll figure it out, but that's what the governor's telling us right now. Once we get to phase 2, and we're not even there yet, our numbers are coming down. I checked it this morning. We got 445 cases. Things are looking better in terms of the total number of cases, but he still hasn't announced the 50. I think when we kind of anticipate that he'll do that in 2-week increments, but we don't know that for sure. I gotta pull up the chat here. We got some chat stuff coming through. I can find it. Too many screens open. Phase 3, all things normal. I don't think we see phase 3 the rest of 2020, to be honest with you. We got some, oh, there we go. All right, so we got a bunch of chats coming through. Yeah, I'm just scrolling through them here. One comment was virtual practices, teleconference workout, and drills. There are a lot, to your credit, there are a lot of you coaches that have been doing that through Zoom or other platforms. In talking to Steve Clout yesterday, one of the resources I'm going to promote, which I haven't up to this point, USA Baseball has got some great online coaching webinars going on that Steve drew my attention to that I think will be helpful for you coaches. Dave asked the question I'm going to get into next. And his is, who Dave Swecker with the Billings Royals, who's reached out to cities and parks, received approval of practice. That's a big comment we're going to talk about. Kyle Pryor, I think that's Miles City, Custer County Public Health is not allowing us to start Monday. There you go. That's exactly what I was talking about. Youth's okay. Okay, these are good feedbacks. Brian Jenkins, think we should stick to 10 or less period, at least 1 week or so. If people start seeing parks full of kids, it's not going to matter. Fair comment. This is kind of feedback we need from you guys. Lethbridge Diamonds are closed till May 31st. Ouch. Coach Burnett, so we need to be phase 2 before games actually begin, correct. And we'll talk about that. And Carl answered him already. But so those are kind of what the guidance. Hopefully we don't go backwards in all of this, and we continue to move and progress with practice. So next slide. So this is where we're at right now with dates, what I call key dates. We're going to allow teams to practice April 27th, and there's a big conditional there, and that's if you have appropriate local jurisdiction permission. I use my hometown Bozeman here as an example. Bozeman plays on the Gallatin County Fairgrounds, so they go through the Gallatin County Fair Board for their lease and running tournaments, all of this stuff we do here. And so we've got the Gallatin County Health Department that could potentially be involved with that, and we've got more cases than anybody in Montana. How that plays out, we're not sure. I know our local health department adopted the governor's recommendations, at least for the week of April 27th. So right now it looks fine, but we need you all to get green lighted for your, let's see. So I've got some polls that I'm trying out here on this point, launch. And for you guys that have this on your computer screen, you should see a couple questions there. Who owns your facility? Choices are county, town and city, minor league, team, school, or other. And then the second question there is, do you anticipate any problems starting to practice there? Yes, no, or not sure. So you should be able to vote there on your screens, those of you that have computers. There's one vote.
Ron, this is Craig. I wasn't going to vote because there's a lot of Helena guys on there. We all use the same.
Yeah, that's fine. And that's a good point. We got to kind of weed out who's voting. So otherwise you get the same hits. So that's a fair comment. I'll let it run a little longer. I got 8 so far. So far, cities and towns are leading, which is what I would have guessed. Counties, we got 6 county replies. And when I end this, you'll see the results. So it's kind of cool that you can get instantaneous results out of this stuff through this polling platform. So now up to 24 votes. And 29, 30, so half our audience has voted now. 70% are cities and towns, 23% are counties. I got 10% as other. All right, so I'm gonna end that and then share the results with you. So you should be able to see these results for the first 2 questions. So you guys jump down ahead, that's fine. We've got some other poll questions there that are later on in our agenda. Okay. So we've got most of our cities and towns, and then I asked, do you anticipate problems starting practice there? And there's 8 replies that were, yes, we do anticipate problems. Which I kind of expect this sort of stuff, and some not sures only because you haven't talked to them. So we want you out talking to those local jurisdictions to get their permission. Because if we get enough of these where we're just playing on these fields and it drives complaints to some of those overarching authorities, we're going to create problems for ourselves. So we're strongly recommending to you programs that you get clearance from whoever your jurisdictional approval goes to before you start. Carl, I know you and I talked about that. Did you want to add anything to that?
You know, Brian Jenkins brings up a good question about what kind of documentation for approval as far as that goes. And really all we can do is recommend that you do something. Because like I said in the chat, one misstep is going to ruin it for everybody. So yeah, just recommending that you get permission to be out there practicing. And then of course adhering to the 10 or less, which will be tough to do.
Yes. I'm going to stop. All right, so then, so it's May 27 with an asterisk, or excuse me, April 27th with an asterisk once you get your clearance. Cole Pryor up in Miles City, what do you think that looks like for you guys as far as when you might be able to get on the field?
So I spoke with our public health, I guess the president of the board last night. They have suspended any activities for youth until they meet again, I guess, essentially. I told them, and I'm the president at MCYBA, so we're T-ball all the way through Legion. And I just asked if a June 1st start date would be in the works, and she thought that was probably more feasible. But definitely over the next couple of weeks, things could open up too as we get more information. I asked what types of guidelines we needed to follow as far as, like if we're sanitizing equipment and things like that. So some of those things, I guess, we'll have some more ideas on here shortly too. So, and I guess I would just request to be part of those board meetings if it works into people's schedules to be part of that in their individual counties.
Okay. Second part of this is games. May 15th, that gives you a couple weeks of practice, which we feel is critical to this whole thing. And there's an or to that, or once the governor announces phase 2. We need to get to phase 2 before we're doing games. We think we'll be in phase 2 before May 15th, but we don't know yet, obviously, because he hasn't announced it yet. So that, Trevor's, I got a text here I got to deal with. I got a guy knocking to get in the meeting that I just allowed in. Okay. So that'd be our earliest game date. And then even if the governor announces phase 2 before that, we're just going to go May 15th. And that could get pushed back depending on when the phase 2 announcements. The jurisdictional permissions, that's what we just talked about. As far as the form of that, I don't need to see that. You guys need to get that and get a comfort level with you got the approval from your county, city, or town. to play. Um,
Ron,
yeah, go ahead, Carl.
something I added into the chat, maybe a poll question needs to be addressed about should we halt all practices until everybody has permission so things are equal for everybody? I don't know if we want to get into that or not. Maybe a simple poll question if you can add that in there.
Let me try to add one here real quick. Just bear with me. So what was the question again, Carl?
Should all practices be halted until everybody has permission to practice from their health departments?
Okay.
So that way things are equal for everybody.
Ron, this is Russ. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Russ is from.
Yeah,
Russ
Ron.
Nelson from.
Belgrade. Yes, Ron. Who's going to reach out to Gallatin County for the teams in Gallatin County? We own our field, so we don't have to deal with the field issue. But if we're waiting for authorizations from the county health department, we should just have one call rather than each team calling.
Agree.
Do you want to reach out to Matt Kelly, Ron, or do you want somebody else to do that?
Yeah, Matt's a friend of mine. I got calls into him for other unrelated things, but at the same time, I could email him about this baseball stuff and see what he says. But
And that would take care of Belgrade and Bozeman and Gallatin Valley.
right. I just don't want to be doing it everywhere in Montana. So,
Right.
yeah, but I do know Matt, so let me put. I'm going to launch this poll. So I don't know how long it takes before you all see it. So, question again: should all practice be halted until everyone is cleared to practice? Yes or no? A lot of votes coming in. It's 35 to 62, 37. And 38, I think that's about all of them. So I'm going to end that and share the results. You should see that now. Yeses, 7 votes, 18%. No votes, 29, 74%. 3 that were undecided. So clearly, teams want to go when they get those permissions and approvals. It's a good question, though. Any other chat stuff? Adam, oh, there was one. Yeah, Brian brings up a good one. We're going to talk about Ryan Jenkins up in Havre talking about travel. We'll get into that, you know, what forms, that kind of stuff. That's a biggie. Overnight stays, another biggie. Adam, I'm not sure what, if you're looking at all this on a computer, but the poll should just show up on your screen, and it was just a button, yes, no kind of response. So I'm not sure why you didn't see that, but. So we're getting a lot of good chat feedback. Carl, if you can kind of keep track of that, that's helpful for me. So here's a great question. Would games have to be played without fans during phase 2? Potentially, yeah. you know, if you're limited to 50, that's pretty much your teams and your support people. If the teams could be considered not in that 50, but I don't know that, and initially, I don't think we do that because we need to stay within the 50. But we might be able to expand that. As far as dugouts, I think your kids may have to, you're going to have to, you know, add order to how they come and go from the dugouts. And then you may have to have kids behind your dugouts sitting in the bleachers to get your spacing for your kids. And my biggest concern in all of this is at the front end of this, because I think it'll get better over time, but we just can't screw it up for ourselves by getting sloppy with this stuff. Next slide. I can't remember what. Oops. So some of the restrictions I think we're up against, you know, potentially not having spectators in our early games, which I talked to Chris Stratton this morning. He's on the meeting. I'm going to let him talk for a couple minutes about live streaming games. And some of us do this and some don't, and our smaller A programs typically don't, but there are opportunities that are out there, and they're fairly inexpensive, that allow you to live stream games on various platforms, Facebook, YouTube. And we may need to gear up to do that if we're seriously looking at playing games with 50 or fewer people in the stands. Chris Stratton, if you could light up your mic and speak to that.
Yeah, so those of you guys know the Missoula Prep Sports Network has streamed the AA and the A state tournaments in the past. I do have the capability to host all of your teams on my website. It would be a matter of putting up the cameras in your facility, and then I can grab the stream and stream it off of my website. I do have play-by-play guys that can do the AA. The A, I don't have enough. I'm going to be working with the University of Montana with their journalism department to try to bring in some more people. But I have the capability of grabbing the stream from your camera, and I can have my play-by-play guy stream the game from his home or my office or wherever. So, you know, like Helena, Jay Scott has the option to do your games right from his home. You know, so there's some options out there for us to do it. And if Ron can get me the email to all of the presidents for the teams, I can send one email out and give you guys all the logistics on how that would work. But MPSN has the ability to stream all of your guys' games right off of our website, and we can work through some things to figure out how to put that together for you.
Is Jay Scott back for the 2020 season?
I don't know. I've been talking hit and miss with him, but you know, I've got people in. I've got a guy in Bozeman that could do it. I've got a guy in Kalispell, Anthony Knockreiner. He's available to do it. I've got several guys here in Missoula, so I do have some opportunities for play-by-play at the AA level, and then depending on what I get going from the University of Montana, then with their journalism department, we can put together more games.
And what we had talked about, Chris, earlier was, you know, the main driver in this is kind of the conference games. You certainly wouldn't have to be doing all of them. It could be an option for you, but we can get you more information on what that would cost. You know, teams are certainly free to try to figure something out on their own. I've worked with Chris for a few years now, and his platforms have gotten better and better over time, and so we do need to be creative in how we approach some of these limitations, and I think that was one good option. Paul for Bozeman asked, is there a fee? You and I talked about that this morning, Chris. You want to touch on that? What you think that might look like as far as a fee for?
There would be different options depending on what you would do, and that's why I would like to, as I figure things out here, if I could just get the email to all of the presidents, and if the coaches want it too, I could send that one email out. But if there's play-by-play involved, there would be a specific cost. I'm thinking I'm going with the route of you guys doing sponsors, and then those sponsors would be able to do, they would have their advertising on every game that is aired as well as the home games. There's a variety of options to do that. And then the teams that don't get play-by-play, then there would just be a small fee of the connection, probably about $50 to connect. And then, you know, there's the cost of the camera if you don't already have a camera and stuff like that. And I can go over all that information with one email. But I want to do this as cost effective as possible. And I know that a lot of you guys, your fees that you get come from the gate. And so I'm trying to figure out a way where you guys can still compensate some gate fees maybe that way if there's no fans allowed into the stadium. So I'm working through a few things right now to make this as economical as possible, because I know you guys are having issues with trying to raise money with sponsors as businesses are closed and stuff like that. It's important to me to make sure that the boys get on the field and that the parents are able to watch them even if we have social distancing going on. So I'm trying to figure out ways to make it cost effective for the teams and also make it available for every team at the AA and the A level.
Yeah, and that's a key point, because the capacity for these things is certainly better at the AA level than the A level, and to try to find something that works for our Class A teams is really important. So, and there were questions about, you know, what kind of, I think Brian up in the Haber asked what kind of equipment to use, that kind of stuff. So there's also, it's some expertise you guys bring to the table for this kind of stuff too. That might
Yep. So once I get the emails, you know, probably by the end of the week, I would be able to send something out that would give you the cost of a camera. You know, when I first started out, and I know Bozeman uses a webcam, you know, you can go with something like that. You know, higher quality does change the cost, but there are ways to curb costs and ways to do things so that our fans or your fans can get the games. That's the important thing. These kids get on the field and the fans get to watch.
Yeah, no, that's all good information.
So once I get the emails from Ron, or the email contacts from Ron, then I will go ahead and by the end of the week send out an informational email telling you what the costs would be and how things would work.
Yeah, and I'm happy to facilitate that. So, Brent, I know you're on the call. You guys have used Chris in the past, or your plans to do that again for this year, or have you gotten that far in your season planning at this point? You may not be on the call. Oh, we got Kelly. All right, some of the other things we need to be prepared to do are listed there on the screen. You know, hand washing for the players as the games progress. I think we're going to need to come up with some procedural guidelines that go out to all our teams for games. You know, we've got a little bit of time to work on that. I'm reaching out to other states to kind of see what they're thinking. I know I talked to the former state chairman from Idaho on Sunday. They were talking about having their teams buy thermometers, you know, these guns you use and put to your forehead. Problem with that is I don't think it's that indicative of a positive COVID test, and as we're finding over time, and it adds costs, and I don't even think you can get them now. But certainly to be asking your kids questions before every practice and games, you know, how are they feeling, kind of a standard list of things that you do every time you're getting together. We're going to need that kind of oversight. So other restrictions, Entry and exit plans, as kids are coming and going from your ballpark. In between games, a lot of our games are double headers, and we're going to have to just maintain distancing through all of that. Help people leave your ballpark. I know in some parks we've got Legionnaires that help with collect tickets and stuff, and they should not be in your ticket booths at all. Anybody that would be deemed at risk should not be even in the ballpark, is my feeling. And if they are, maybe it's later on in the summer. But for those people you've relied on for tickets and concessions that are more susceptible, I don't want them in your parks. Restaurants or restrooms, cleaning is going to be a big deal. And then I think initially we may have to just have our concession stands closed and figure out at some point, maybe those open back up. But again, a lot of this stuff is just to make sure we get going without screwing ourselves up. And it's one thing that the county health guys look at, it's stuff like concession stands. And if we're running on with all this stuff going on, I think it opens us up to be more scrutinized for that. And so I think initially we just go without them. Good comments, John, up in Helena. No team water jugs, no sharing of dugout cups. All of those are good points. Bucks, Bitter Bucks, looking at portable hand washing stations. As you guys get information on this is all great stuff. Rotating buckets of balls that we can start using to build that list of game day kind of operations we want our teams doing. Because like I said earlier, I certainly don't have all the answers to this stuff. So your help is on these things is appreciated. So travel restrictions. This is a big one. Obviously we're not crossing into Canada, and the Canadian teams aren't coming down here for the near future. We hope that changes, but who knows when that's going to open up. So, these, as we talk about opening our season up, as Canada opens up, these same things would apply up there. And I think all our game day procedures will apply up there. We're all still playing under American Legion rules. And so what we develop for our overall program will be effective in both places. Overnight travel is a biggie. I've talked to a few coaches about this, that they've talked to their parents about overnight travel. And at least the feedback I've gotten so far is that the parents don't have a big problem with it. I can't imagine all of our teams are going to fall in that same viewpoint. But the question does come up, do we restrict overnight travel and try to draw circles around programs so that nobody travels more than 300 miles, for example? And to do that, we have to restructure conferences and plan east-west thing for AA, and for the west side of the state for Class A. You guys have a north and west already that you play with, and we could maybe restrict our conferences to those smaller pools so that you don't have to travel, and minimizing overnight stays. And I'm open for your input and feedback on that. I think one of our polling questions, poll 2, I'm going to share the results on that. A bunch of you guys have jumped in and answered that on this overnight stay question. So you should see that on your screen now. So right now, and maybe what I'll do, because I don't know if everybody got a chance to vote, is I can relaunch the poll for questions 3 and 4. But question 3 was, should overnight travel be eliminated? 39% voted yes, 24% no. 36% unsure. So I'm going to relaunch that and let you guys have an opportunity to vote. It should clear the results for that. So yeah, you can skip questions 1 and 2 and go down to questions 3, 4. Actually, do 3, 4, and 5, which is the last 3 questions of that. So. While you're doing that, I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee. I'll be back. All right, so we had, I think 32 voted, sharing the results now on questions 3 and 4. So 3, 4, and 5. Should overnight travel be eliminated? 53% of you said yes, 25 no, 22% unsure. Then I had a question about scheduled tournaments. Should they proceed? 44% yes, 25% no, 31% unsure. Well, I guess I had the same. That last one was had to do with the season conference schedule. Leave as is, change to accommodate less travel overnight. Overwhelmingly, 63% like that. Okay, thanks for your input on that. And then I don't know, as you've talked to your parents, I assume your programs are doing that. You know, the idea of putting 4 kids in a motel room, what your parents are thinking about that. The ones I've talked to over here, they seem to be fine with it. I like John Burnett's got one of his chat inputs there. Hosting triangular conference games in centralized cities if we want to reduce travel and overnights. I think that's all fair game stuff to, especially at the front end of this, to try to minimize our travel and overnight stuff. Jeff LaProuse, and we know this is going on with the fundraising. So Jeff brings up a good point that, Butte's program's looking at 50% less money to start with. So reducing overnight travel and all of that makes sense with the money you're going to have to run your seasons. When I think of Billings going to Kalispell, you can't really do that without laying over somewhere. That's it's $1,500 typically when you lay one of these teams over. And do you consider playing that, if we're going to play that conference game as AA, do we let them play in Great Falls? I don't think there's any bad ideas or any wrong against this stuff given what we're doing. That's where we're looking for your input as coaches too on these season baseball. I just look at that as a bonus, and how we get there and what we've got to do to make it work is up to us. So yeah, another budget comment from Scott Sparks, and I think if we asked every team, we're all going to get the same input. I've talked to Paul and Bozeman and Garrett, and we got some of the same stuff going on here. There was a comment by David over in Billings talking about waiting for practice till May 4th. That gives everybody time to get permission to play at their fields. David, could you turn on your microphone? I'm curious on that comment and where you guys would be practicing over there. Perts, I assume, and I'm not sure who owns Perts Field. But.
Yeah, we're at Perts, but we have a separate contract with them, so we don't know for sure if we have to get city approval or not. So it might not be an issue for us, but it just seems like a lot of teams are having that issue right now, and that's a whole week that one team will get to practice versus other teams. So
yeah, that's a fair comment. We're trying to find middle ground with this stuff. The governor's given us a green light, a little bit of a green light to start next week. But I'll ask you this question, or open it up to all our coaches that are on the call. But and we've got still 62 people on this. But so if you started May 4th and start playing games May 15th, does that give you enough time? I'm not sure it does. That gives you 11 days. And then Brent can unmute. He just commented. So Brent Hathaway, if you want to unmute.
Yeah, Ron. I just wanted to make the comment. I think we need to be careful about making some of these concrete decisions so early, when in a month things could look totally different when it comes to overnight travel and tournaments and things like that. I'd hate to see us make decisions right now that later on we could look at and say, we could be traveling, we could be staying overnight, things like that.
I agree with that, and that's not my intent necessarily, is to say, okay, no tournaments. I think traveling for a tournament in state can still work. My main deal is that the front end of this, we just need to be smart at how we lead into our season and not just get too crazy with this stuff. So to have incremental things, and we're going to talk about our state tournaments, those things, we don't have to decide all of that stuff right now. We can kind of conceptually say, okay, we're going to move our dates back, all that, but some of these things we can, I think, adapt to them as time goes on. So I think that was a fair comment, and what we decide tonight, and some of this stuff we're not going to decide at this meeting, but we're getting a lot of great feedback from you on it. Yeah. Yeah, so John Burnett's question, you all see these chat feeds, so you can read them just as well as me, and there's a lot of good ones coming. You know, so the governor, the way I look at this, and I'm not a big one to tell you guys how to run your programs, I never have been, and the governor has kind of given his directive with a lot of local rule as to how this is going to go down to the counties and to the county health departments. My feeling is we do the same thing where we let you as programs get your permission, start practice when you've got those, and if teams are lined up and can do that, start your practice. And then I'm telling you, your games will start May 15th. I don't know that I need to tell you you can't practice next week for everybody across the state, because some of these teams can practice starting next week. And I'll get off my soapbox on that. Season and conference schedules, that whole thing goes back to my comments about maybe breaking our conferences down a little bit more. I know over in the west there, you already kind of set up with that north-south stuff. We lose Cranbrook out of there, obviously, for a while, but hopefully they can potentially come in and play. Kevin, I know you're on the call up there. Whitefish, do you have any comment or thought on that?
Yeah, Ron, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, we were sitting here. I got a coach sitting here 6 feet away, of course. We were talking, we can pretty much do north and south. We can do day trips for pretty much our whole conference.
Okay.
I think most of the guys would agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's where we want to land. It's a little more difficult with the AA guys.
Yeah, extremely.
John Burnett, you could do a 3 triangular thing in Helena and take care of some conference play without having to drive all the way across the state. But, and again, you know, as far as these conference schedules, you guys like to do your conference scheduling, and if we've got to adapt and change those, you know, I'm going to look to you guys to figure that out as a group. I think it's all doable. I'm not going to come in and tell you how to run your conference schedule. Obviously, we potentially lose Medicine Hat and Lethbridge at the early part of the season, and maybe they come in at some point. You just can't count on it. You know, I think Greg Fitzgerald, you're on the call. You've been real quietly listening to all this. Greg's probably our long trip for the South District down there in Dillon. What's your thought? Because in the South, we're kind of set up to do you could have GVO, Belgrade, Bozeman, and Livingston, and then you guys, Anaconda over there on the west side.
Our travel's nothing. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Our travel's nothing. You know, I mean, we do day trips all the time. So I mean, going to Livingston's our furthest trip. So I don't think that's an issue. I think you know, we had talked about extending or having more conference games with our you know, with our division because of loss of some of the non-conference stuff. So I don't think that's an issue. And in talking to Johnny and Jeff, I think you know, I haven't talked to everybody else, but we're all probably on the same page.
Yeah. For those that you don't know, Greg, he's the principal down in Dillon. I'm curious, are you guys going back to school down there? Or are you going to stay closed for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question, but it's probably 99.9% sure that we're not going back to school, as is probably every other place that has a Legion baseball team. So I think it'd be pretty difficult at this point in time to send kids back to school.
Right. So, I mean, other than the double A guys with the bigger travel, and you probably saw the write-ups where the Road Warrior write-ups, I think they were talking about our Billings teams, traveling 7,000 miles for a full Legion season. And, I don't think we can be doing that or even close to it this year, just from a funding standpoint. So we may have to be creative in terms of where we place some of these conference games. And, we're open for suggestions there, but I'm going to look to you coaches to kind of navigate that. And if we can get going, if we could start playing games by May 15th, my feeling is you could run with the schedules you've got. We're going to talk about our postseason stuff here in a minute, but for the fact that National canceled the AA regional and the World Series, it opens up dates later in the summer that we can use to move our state tournaments back, and that creates more time where you could maybe move some conference games into that week or so that we gain.
Ron,
Yes.
it's Paul.
Yeah. Hey, Paul.
Reading the comments, I think I agree with a lot of people that it maybe a little bit early. I think at this point, people can practice. They have permission in their communities, their cities, their towns. They've got clearance. They've got clearance from American Legion Montana, so they can go and keep the social distancing, practice in groups of 10 or less, and that. But as for the games, we don't know whether it'll be May 15th or later. But I think people are doing it safe in practice. But I think a big thing will be what is the latest date that we can start and still get conference games in to have a district and a state tournament.
Great
and
question.
Then we adjust accordingly when we get clearance for games from the state.
Yeah, Brent.
Go ahead.
Well, Brent has chatted, and so at the end of this meeting, one of my topics is we need to get kind of a regular meeting schedule going on this. This Zoom stuff seems to work pretty well. As much as I love going to Great Falls to do the big spring meetings, this is a pretty good second to that. But so there's no reason we can't keep meeting, and I want feedback from you all as to how this is going, obviously, as we go through. And I'm going to want feedback from our umpires, and I'm going to give them a chance to talk here too. There's a lot of good chat stuff going on here, and Adam over with the Scarlets suggested we do a June 1 start date. That certainly gets everybody plenty of time to get permission and get some practice time in there. I'm certainly open to a start date that's different than May 15th. I think June 1 still works for getting all your conference play in. A lot of you guys are blowing up some of your early tournament stuff anyway, just because you don't have the money to go do it. And some of all the out-of-state stuff's gone. So I'm certainly open to a June 1 start date. That gives you, arguably, it does give you more practice time, all of that. David, with the Royals, your first conference games aren't until June 12th. I have posed that same question that Paul just brought up to Brent and Dwayne Scott, some of the coaches I've talked to about what is our drop dead date. If we can't be going by X date, we ain't going. And, June 1 was kicked around and June 15th was kicked around. And I don't know what that date is for sure, but I don't think it's July 1 either. So somewhere in that mid-June range, if we're not playing, then I don't think we can play at all. But so we're getting some feedback. Let me throw another poll question up on a start date. I'm curious now as I read the chat stuff.
Hey, Ron, this is Brian. Could I just ask a question in regards to what you just said, maybe while you're putting that poll together? Is there a reason we can't look at changing the format.
Brian Jenkins.
Yes, Brian Jenkins from Haver. Yep.
Okay.
If we could change the format of what we consider the season, we're already unique. So maybe this year the North obviously is going to be really unique, but maybe we only play one game away, and we don't have to get as many conference games in playing the same team. Even if we have to go a shortened season that way, I think everybody's willing to do that as well.
I would agree. Yeah, that's why I say that any and all ideas are on the table, and we may have to play compressed seasons, or state tournaments may have to compress some. So, no, that's not out of the question at all. Gotta get my poll up here. So I'm working on that. Is there any other feedback you guys want to chime in with while I'm working on this?
Hey, Ron, this is Coach Hatt. Can I jump in?
Yep, go ahead.
So if we're looking at starting conference games on June 1st, are we also going to talk about extending the length of the season so conference games that are scheduled before that can be made after that date?
Yep, and I think we do need to push we need to extend our season. So last day for conference play, and I'll get into that too. Okay, so this is poll 4.
Hey, Ron.
All right, so I threw up poll 4. I got 3 dates, 3 options: May 15, June 1, June 10 plus. I don't think we have to do it in increments less than that. So that should be on your screens now. If you guys want to take a minute to vote on those starting dates, we'll wait.
And are these starting dates for conference, Ron?
That would be, well, no, this would be for games, because I've got May 15th, which was my original game announcement date. So this would be for games. Conference games, I mean, realistically, most of you all don't even play conference games till June 1st in a regular season. It's unusual, at least from what I've seen, that you're going before that.
Because I'm looking at that June 1st, and we host a Memorial Day tournament here with a lot of Montana teams.
And you could talk me into starting Memorial Weekend for the whole state too. And that kind of works with that June 1 number, I think. So we could, and it looks like the June dates, I mean, it's leading this 54%, 35%. So you all are preferring to go a little later, and I think maybe the middle ground is to do that Memorial Weekend. Brent, do you have Idaho teams, and you typically have out-of-state teams that would have been coming in that?
We have Coeur d'Alene, Idaho that is scheduled to be in it, but if we don't have the open border thing, then we'd have to bag them.
Yeah, and I think it'll go down that way, to be honest with you. Let's see. So I was looking at when would that Memorial, and I don't know if there's other teams running Memorial tournaments or not. I think Great Falls used to, Tony, at one time years ago.
Yeah, we used to, but now we go to Missoula as well.
Okay, all right. Bozeman, were you going to Missoula Memorial Weekend?
We are. Yeah, we're taking our AA and our A.
Okay, that's a great tournament. I've been there many times when the weather's good.
It's always good.
Okay. Let's see. So when would that start, Ron? That tournament?
It would start the 22nd of May. It's a Friday.
We got an early, so that's right between the June 1 and May 15th, and we're definitely, so I'll end the polling, kind of show you what you guys voted here. 42 votes in, that's good response. You should be able to share the results here. You should be able to see that now. So, yeah, 55% like the June 1. You know, teams don't have to start May 22nd, but that pushes us a week later. I'd be fine with going May 22nd, and teams that want to start June 1 are certainly allowed to do that as well. And that, actually, more I think about it, makes sense, because we've stressed this whole permission thing pretty hard, and I know some teams will need to work on that. We just heard from Cole up in Miles City, and their future's questionable as to when they can practice. And so I would have no problem going with May 22nd. Carl, what do you think?
Yeah, that sounds great. As far, it'd be awesome to be able to promote this Memorial Day weekend type of thing for American Legion Baseball in Montana opening up. Some of the chats, yeah, we are kind of getting a little premature on deciding dates for games, because obviously the governor will dictate that, but at least we're getting some feedback right now to determine some of that once that comes. But essentially right now, the feedback that I'm getting from all of you is that once you have permission, you can start practicing, and that's the big decision we needed to make in this meeting. Starting Monday, everybody can start practicing. Doesn't sound like anybody is going to be hurt with teams starting practice before one another, but as long as you have permission. Then I say we have another one of these meetings in a couple of weeks to determine when we're going to start our games. But yeah, I like Memorial Day if the governor makes the announcements that we hope he's going to make.
Right, and so that my earlier slide where phase 2 has to be going still stands. If he hasn't announced phase 2 by Memorial Day, we're waiting around until he does. So.
Exactly.
So that's a good point. Johnny threw something up there about how does the lodging work. I think room availability will be no problem on any of this stuff. I don't know, what the price points are going to be. You may be able to put 2 kids in a room and get the same cost that you had when you had 4 kids. I have no idea to know what you do there. Jeff LaProuse, how do you run a tournament with under 50 people? You run it with umpires, 2 teams, and nobody in your ballpark. The 2 teams, you basically can't have the teams on deck in your park. You got to manage the batting cage, all that stuff. And I think you can run a tournament. You just can't have people in your park to do it. And that again goes to the phase 2 stuff. You got to be in phase 2 to get to the 50 people. And I saw last night's news that Missoula County has already opened theirs up to 25 people for your farmers market. Well, that's different than anywhere else in the state right now. And Kelly Morford up in Libby just wrote a lengthy chat there that I think is on point. So I feel okay with that being a target as May 22nd if everything else falls in line with getting to phase 2. I do like the fact it allows for more potential practice and teams to get lined up on their approvals. So I think that's useful.
Hey, Ron, Brian Jenkins here. Okay to talk?
Yep, you have the floor.
One statement I'd say about that, I just wonder how the group feels about that being the opener to Legion Baseball, a tournament where communities from around the state would travel to, and the potential of something happening out of that reflecting negatively on everybody in the state?
They've run that tournament for years. I've been to it 20 years ago. It's kind of a kickoff to a season for sure. If you're running it with no concessions and abiding by all the other distancing stuff that we've talked about, I'm not sure that creates a problem. And as far as the overnight travel stuff and how you get kids there on team buses, you may have to just have individuals drive them over. And that's kind of stuff that I think goes down to the program level. We got a lot of big team buses that haul these kids around.
I think, Ron, it's Paul Mrazek. I think what Carl said there, and like you said in your slideshow about the phase 2, I really think we're in a wait and see right now. Those that can practice and have permission can go ahead and practice in their communities. Keep having meetings, wait and see what the governor does. And we have some dates set as to when, like you've said, the last possible date roughly is middle of June to start, so that we could actually get conference games in and still have a state tournament. And if we get to start earlier, great. If here in Canada, we're probably going to be starting way later than you guys because of the border. But you guys will be able to get going, and we'll jump in if we can. But I think overall, it's still in a wait and see mode right now. But at least we're talking about when some possible start dates could be, and people associations start planning for it and being ready. But yeah, but I think we should have another one of these meetings in a week or two.
Yeah, we're kind of proving the platform here, and it seems to be working pretty well. Adam over in Billings, are you guys still going to try to run your big tournament? I think that's typically in June.
Right now, yeah, we're going to try to run it in June, but that's not till the 25th of June, so we've got quite a while. I don't know if we'll get the out-of-state teams, which puts us at only about 4 teams participating, and then we also only have 1 field to run it on as well. So we got a couple different obstacles that we have to deal with at this time with that tournament.
Okay. Garrett, you're running one in Bozeman. What's the date for that?
That's late June as well, like June 22nd through the 25th.
Okay.
And we're still planning on that one as well.
And how many out-of-state teams did you have you think were going to come?
Well, I've got a team from Washington, Yakima, that Washington canceled Legion Baseball, but he thinks they're playing club baseball or something different. We've got a couple teams from Idaho that are planning on coming. So obviously with everything.
Yeah, this all assumes our border travel is cleaned up.
Yeah, I think nobody's canceling stuff right now. We're kind of waiting to see what happens. And with Governor Bullock kind of moving in the direction of starting to open things, people are hopeful. And, again, a common theme on the chat thread is that people want to do what we're allowed to do to start with, which sounds like small group practice this week, and then see what Governor Bullock does, and then obviously surrounding states, how they follow suit. But if we don't have to start canceling stuff now, I don't think there's a good reason to. So, do what we're allowed to do and see how it develops after today.
Thanks.
This is Russ. I think all Gallatin County teams got to get the permission from the county health department before we step on the field tomorrow.
Well, you can't step on it tomorrow.
Well, I know, Monday, but I think for Gallatin County, we got to have that permission before any team starts.
Yeah, I agree. We have a target date of Wednesday. You know, we're not gonna go on our field until we have green light. I commented earlier, we checked in with the fair board and they were okay, but you know, there's so many different bodies. I think the right body is the actual health department, and we need to hear from them. I agree.
Hey, John Burnett up in Helena, you just typed in the chat there. You want to unmute and kind of talk through that?
Yeah, Ron, I was just saying, you know, we haven't had our tryouts yet. And, you know, with 3 separate teams for tryouts, we're anticipating, you know, probably 70 plus kids coming out for those tryouts. So that's going to take us some time if we have to keep it under groups of 10. That's going to take us some time to get through that. So we're supportive of getting that done and, you know, maybe starting our practices after that and then kind of reconvening in 2 weeks and figuring out games at that point. But that might take us a week and a half to get through that process.
Yeah, no, that's a great comment. And I know that you're not alone in the tryout thing. There's other teams. I mean, a lot of the A teams haven't even figured their tryouts out yet. But yeah, so and Bozeman, I think Bozeman did yours already, didn't you, Garrett?
No, we haven't. We were going to go March 25th and run it for 2 weeks, and we didn't do that. So we did throw and hit twice a week, January, February, and first part of March. Our kids have been doing stuff, doing band work and things at home. I hope, you know, there's no way to really enforce that, but I think we're staying in shape where, yeah, you know, we're planning on starting, keeping guys short, you know, continued band work and throwing. And then when we do go, we're going to really limit pitchers and start slow, you know, but that's, you know, every coach knows it's his job and his staff's job to evaluate where his guys are at and get them ready. And I don't think anybody's going to push it before their guys are ready, but, you know, we're still working out at home and stuff.
Okay. Coach Hathaway, you probably did your tryouts back in 2018, didn't you?
No, we haven't done ours either. But I mean, with 3 teams, I mean, our AA club and its roster is pretty much defined. Our A club, there's a couple question marks there, but it's that B team that you know, you're making decisions on whether kids are staying in the program or not. So. But I don't think it'll take us a week and a half to make that decision.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks. All right, so we've gotten a lot of good feedback on that. Still green light for the 27th for practice. Once you get permissions, sounds like teams are starting to work on that. We'll target the 22nd for start of games with the asterisk of the phase 2 stuff. And then let's talk next about our postseason stuff. And I've got a calendar I'll pull up. Let me find it here. Where is my calendar?
While you're looking for that, I want to float the idea of having another meeting, maybe in the evening, maybe a Sunday evening, whether that's 1 week from now or 2 weeks from now, to be determined. But anybody disagree with a Sunday night meeting instead of a Saturday in the middle of the day meeting?
I think that would be great. I think we should do weeklies for the time being. There's so much stuff at stake here. And time of day on Sunday, I'm wide open for that. One of the reasons we did a mid-afternoon for this, because Gary White and Jeff Nelson had some Legion meetings, district stuff going on this morning, and I really wanted them to be on this, so I we set it for 2:00. That was the main reason. But I think doing weeklies will work fine, and we can just post them on our website for people to go read when the meetings are scheduled, all that.
So I imagine everybody's going to want to take advantage of daylight with Sunday practices. So maybe Sunday at 7 p.m. too late, 8 p.m., 6 p.m. What are thoughts on that?
I think that's fine. I think we need some sidebars though with the conferences and the leagues. I think you can have everybody all on one, but I think at some point the AA guys need to start talking to each other, and the different districts need to talk to each other just to make sure everybody's having the same conversations, because obviously a lot of the A conversations don't even have anything to do with us at the AA level. So I know here in Billings we've got 5 teams now using one field, and for us it's going to be pretty tough. So we're going to need to definitely go and do some rescheduling there.
I couldn't agree more on the so I set up this Zoom account to get all this going. It's a paid account. I'm more than happy to make that available to Carl to run AA meetings, or I already told Dwayne Myers with our umpires, they'll be able to use it to run umpire meetings. And I agree that we need to break this down into smaller units. The AA guys do need to kind of get together and think through this stuff independent of this meeting. But this is a great start for the overall program to get this much participation in a meeting like this is really helpful. So I pulled up a calendar. You should be able to see that. Let me make sure I'm still sharing the screen one. Yeah, good. These were the dates that we had before all of this came down on us. And so we had our district tournaments starting early. This is really early, the 16th. And the reason for that is the American Legion World Series, we work backwards from that. And every 6 years, we got to roll it forward because of the date creep we get in the World Series. So this was that year that everything rolled forward. So we end up with a July 16th date for districts, and then our state tournaments both would have started the 25th of July. Our last day for conference AA play was the 20th. And I'm trying to think when the last day for conference games, which again was really early, was July 12th for the Class A guys. So then we're playing the state tournaments there. You end them on the 29th. Our Legion AA Regional would have been the 5th of August. Again, that's early for the AA Regional. The World Series moved up to the 13th. Championship Tuesday would have been the 18th. I think we want to push our state tournaments back. And I know there was a text thread I saw a few weeks ago where August 5th was kicked around pretty hard as maybe that what would have been the AA regional date is now our state tournament date. Talking to Cody Beers in Wyoming, this is what they're doing. So Wyoming's doing their districts the 23rd, and they do them in 2 venues, Casper and Cody, and their state tournaments for Class A are going to be the 31st of July. Their AA is going to be August 5th. So I'm not exactly sure why they're doing them, that far apart, but we've done our A and AA on top of each other the last couple of years, which has seemed to work out. The format for these tournaments, I don't think it's fair to, well, for Great Falls, our AA host, moving these dates around doesn't work for them. It's not going to work for them. I don't think it's fair to Great Falls or Havre to have to host the state tournament in one venue. Then it takes a buttload of work to run these things. You're not going to make much money. It's not fair to you as a host towns to be doing that. So what I think we need to do is just play our early rounds in the state tournaments as home games for the team with the highest seed. So if Missoula is playing Kalispell and Kalispell's a higher seed, they're driving up to Kalispell for their first game. We can look at doing something different. You know, maybe you end up with the two teams that are left, you might play the last 2 days in one town, but it just is not right to be putting these tournaments in these towns with all the uncertainty with them and then calling it, well, you had your turn in 2020, sorry, we're moving on. So I'm a big proponent of letting Havre have it in 2021, letting Great Falls have it in 2021, and figure out how we're going to play these postseason things. I looked into Nebraska's website. Nebraska's got 50 teams. They've already canceled their postseason tournaments altogether, and they're just looking to play conference games and whatnot. And I think they blew them up because they're trying to think of running these state tournaments in one place, which I don't think we do that this year.
Hey, Ron, are you looking at not having a host site for the AA state tournament, or if that's a possibility?
Correct.
By August, are you thinking that that would be all right?
I'm thinking that I have no idea if it'll be all right or not, but I just know how much work it goes into running a state tournament, and you want to make money, and you don't want this kind of stuff hanging over your tournament. So I don't think it's fair to either our AA or our A host to have to expect to run it with all the uncertainty at this point. So I'm putting out there that we do not do that this year. And I know I got Brian Jenkins on the line with Havre, and I've already talked to Tony about this earlier when I met with their staff on team registration. So,
You mind if I speak for a second, Ron?
who we got?
Brian Jenkins.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Brian.
I just posted on our thread. I just posted on our thread that, one of the things that I think maybe a goal target for next Sunday's meeting is, we move forward with this ability to practice for teams that can get approval locally, and then make a goal for next Sunday that this is maybe by next Sunday we define what the season is to look like, because I just get leery that we're talking tournaments that aren't even conference related. I know they're very important to Montana baseball as a whole, but it's also could be very detrimental to this season if we're not dialed in with what we're going to do altogether. And just with that statement, I would say Havre, as we've discussed, we haven't had a chance to talk yet, Ron, but we are totally okay with the high seed host, and very appreciative that you would move us to next year, because I just think it's important we take a look at those factors and quit focusing on hosting a tournament where we're bringing in people from out of state or even mixing interstate when we don't need to, when we can just do one-day stuff, have a season, get our conference games in, play our postseason via a high host seed, and move on to look to a brighter future for next year. That's just my opinion. So,
yeah. No, and I value that. Tony, you're on. You want to chime in for Great Falls and as the would-be AA host?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree as well. Obviously, hosting a full 18 tournament would be very difficult at this time. The only other suggestion is if we are able to have maybe some sort of like NCAA regional type format where if you decide to have a Western Conference and an Eastern Conference, you take 4 teams and 4 teams from each side. They play kind of a district tournament, 4 teams, double elimination, and you could do either the top team out of each conference play a 3-game set, or you take the top 2 and play another regional type format. If we're able to do that.
I like that because it cuts travel down, potentially do an east-west thing. Again, we're not advancing anybody past our state. So how we do this is entirely up to us. National is not going to care. So those kinds of ideas are fair for discussion. To Brian's point, I think we're trying to talk about a lot of big picture issues in our first meeting because they're important. And I tend to think about the season as a whole. But you're right. We got to kind of look at this. Thing's going to look different a week from now, probably, than it does today. So to try to figure all of this out isn't my intent, but it is my intent to get them out there for you guys to be thinking about. And Tony's comment on different formats. Maybe we go that route. Maybe we got to go single elimination if we have to compress things. But all of that, we don't have to decide that today. But those are good comments.
One thing I'm worried about for Class AA, this is Carl Hennel. We could potentially, again, this is bigger picture, that might not even come into play. But with the Canadian teams not being able to come down and play, we're looking at a 7-team division. In that case, if that were to play out into late July, beginning of July, we might need another team to come up into the Class AA brackets. Austin Noble, I know you're on this. I don't know if anybody from the Red Sox is on, but my first thought would be to combine a Bitterroot Valley type of thing, where you combine, you make one AA team and you still have your Bucks and your Red Sox playing at the A level. I might be speaking prematurely and might be stepping out of line here, but we might need to consider one of our big Class A programs stepping on up. And the way how I'm kind of looking at the map is it would need to be a West team if we were to do a East-West thing type of postseason format. Thoughts to that down there in the Bitterroot Valley, if there's anybody from the Red Sox or Austin, if you want to.
Yeah, Callan's on. He's a Red Sox coach also. So.
Yeah, I would have to talk to the Bucks and see what they kind of have going. And, both boards and how that would work and, where to practice, when to practice and all that kind of stuff. I don't think I'm necessarily opposed to it at all. It's just whether that would work or not and work with the Bucks people too. We're pretty flexible right now. We're just trying to get as many kids able to play as we can. And so if we had to do that and jump up to AA with combining, I think we'd be okay with that possibly. But we have to talk to the Bucks too. So if the Bucks want to jump in, go for it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Between the two boards that have to figure that out logistically, and it's definitely something I would be open to, thinking about and talking with Callan a little more about and figuring out how we'd want to do it. So, worst comes to worst, and that's something we need to do. I think most likely we could probably make something like that happen.
Sweet. I'm just trying to plant the seeds. I'm seeing Coach Studner with some body language there. Doug, you want to chime in with this type of idea?
Well, I guess you don't need 8 teams because you're not going to regionals. So I don't understand why it's a concern. I understand that you want more teams to be able to play in your state tournament, but the only reason you need to have 8 teams is to qualify a team for the regionals and then ultimately the World Series, and there is no regionals. So to ask teams to all of a sudden put this on their plate when all they're trying to do is get baseball games in, I think is not only premature but unnecessary.
Yeah, Austin, I had heard a rumor that you may have had about with this stuff. Is that fact or fiction?
Can you repeat that, Ron? Sorry.
Oh, I had heard that you might have had about with this COVID-19 stuff and have since recovered from that. Was that fact or fiction?
I mean, if I was sick. Yeah. Oh yeah. I was sick. I didn't get tested for it.
Okay.
They wouldn't do it, but I mean, I'm better now.
Yeah, well, you look fine, but so if you didn't get tested, then could have been anything.
Yep. And I think my symptoms weren't severe enough to be tested. I didn't need any medical attention. And back then they didn't, the tests were limited and all that.
Right. Okay.
I'm good now.
Fair enough. Good deal. So as far back to kind of these dates, I'd be all for pushing back to August 5, which I think was kind of consistent with some of the text threads I saw, and it builds in, an extra week at least of potential conference games and all that. So I would have no problem going on August 5 on that. As far as the A guys, if they wanted to go a little differently from that, I'd have no problem with that either. Like I said, the last couple of years, we've started on a Saturday and put A and AA on top of each other on a Saturday start. I think it's been fine. This year, we can do whatever you guys want. I'm not sure when football cranks up, but that would be the thing we got to be mindful of is the football season.
August 14th.
14th.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you could. So if you started started on the 8th, play 5 days, you could be done on Wednesday. I'd also be a proponent of doing just straight double elimination brackets like we do for districts, not do the typical AA brackets we do, or with the extra game in there, and just play it straight double elimination. That's a long ways away. I hope we're still around to even be playing those games.
So Ron, will we have a meeting next week where we're split by AA? Because obviously the A tournaments, state tournaments, a lot different looking than AA. So
well, yeah, we will. I know I talked to Dwayne Scott. He's not even on the meeting. He wanted to be here but couldn't. So we'll do an A meeting. I'll run that. I'm going to give the keys to the logins and stuff for Carl to run a AA meeting and work with those guys. But we'll do individual things here going forward. Because you're right, they do look different. The district tournament play would be similar where you're traveling, to play those dates. District tournaments are easier because your travel circles are smaller. Since we've gone to 7-inning games, nobody stays over. So you guys are all driving in, play a game, you're driving home. So those are logistically easier things to run.
It's not easier in the East, Ron. It's 300 miles to Glasgow.
True. So maybe you guys get the trophy for that. And Pete Moe, I talked to Pete would have been on the call. He's chasing cows around on his ranch.
Yeah.
Talked to Pete this morning, so I told him we'll record this and hopefully you can go back and watch it. But you are correct. The East is a whole different animal for travel. So that's kind of the landscape of that. And so I think there was a lot of support earlier to move those dates, and we can figure that out later.
Ron, can you throw me up a quick poll for the AA coaches only about when our next Sunday meeting, what time would work best? Like a 6 o'clock slot, a 7 o'clock slot, an 8 o'clock slot? Or maybe I can just pull that right now verbally.
Well, I could throw it up. I'm working on it here. 5. Time on Sunday, though, you're thinking for the day. What times you want me to throw out there?
Let's go with 6, 7, 8, and 9. Let's just give them four choices. 9 o'clock's kind of late, but it could work because these guys might want to use up all the daylight possible for practice.
All right. Save that. Watch polling. Should work. All right, so you should be seeing that on your screen now with the times.
Good deal.
Hey,
Double A coaches, get in there and vote on that, would you?
Hey, Ron, Austin, Noble, can I just chime in while guys are voting? I just have a thought. Is that all right?
Yeah, thoughts are good.
Just something maybe to consider. I know the decision on this would be way above my head. With the colleges considering extending eligibility, I've talked to a few coaches in our conference about the possibility of reclassing the seniors. I mean, I know we allow college freshmen of a certain age. Just something to consider with those colleges extending eligibility, seniors not leaving. A lot of our guys that do go on might not, if they haven't found spots already, might not have a spot to go. Just something that I wanted to run by you guys and see if it was possible, reasonable. I mean, obviously right now, not a decision that needs to be hammered down, but just a thought.
Okay, so here's what we got. It looks like 7 o'clock.
All right, Double A guys, let's just go with that. Plan on 7 o'clock next Sunday for this Zoom meeting.
And Craig voted. That's why we got more votes than teams, which is okay. So
I voted too.
On that note, oh, okay, all right, that's good. I didn't, so 7's a good time. And you can work on these tournament formats and dates later. We've kind of thrown them out there. We definitely don't need to figure that out tonight. Craig, I got you on. I think Willie's still on. I wanted to give you guys a spot just to kind of tell us where you're at with Malbua and the season and just kind of what's going on and any thoughts you might have on how we can, have our umpires keep their distancing, work games kind of fitting within these parameters we're talking about here.
Did you say Willie's still on?
Well, Willie, are you still on? He had called in just by phone, so he came through as just kind of an iPhone login, but I don't know if he's still on.
Okay. I mean, we're just like you guys, all anxious to get back on the field.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think there's Willie. I think, we're going to work through the same precautions that everybody else has to. We might have to make some adjustments because of the proximity of people and how that's supposed to work. But, I think if we're playing a baseball game, you're going to have at least the batter and catcher are going to be close, so umpire's going to can be close too. But I think that's kind of where we'll be at. I guess I would just ask that as you guys I voted on the AA meeting, so that I can make sure that we have somebody there to attend that. I just ask that if, as you guys keep having meetings, to make sure you keep us informed so that we can make sure we're letting our members know as to how we're going to try to work things this year. I don't think we'd be opposed to any of the tournament setups that have been described as far as for the state tournaments or district tournaments. It just would be a different process for us in trying to get people there, whether it's at one host site or whether we're going to, higher seed as the home team and you'll play that game there, just to make sure that we have the best umpires for those games. Even though the World Series and regionals have been canceled, those games still can have a lot of meaning for those kids. So we want to make sure we put the best out there.
I gotta love Kelly Morford's comment there. I will call balls and strikes from our dugout.
He always does.
Yeah. That's why I was going to say the whole not having any fans in the stands isn't really a problem.
Right. Well, I was talking to one of our coaches over this way, and for these early games, he was suggesting maybe we have the umpire stand behind the pitcher and call them like we do with the little guys and keep the distancing, at least initially, set up that way. But we could figure that out later too.
You got anything to add, Willie?
No, I don't.
I think you had pretty good sign-up numbers from when I talked to Dwayne Myers. He seemed to think you guys were pretty strong this year going into things, and your numbers were looking pretty good.
Yeah.
We got some good new recruits, and we've been able to retain people better. We're becoming more organized, which is helpful.
Right. I told Dwayne I'll send you guys the logins to set these meetings up and run Zoom meetings with. You can have a couple hundred guys on there if you need to. So. I think those were kind of the big bullet points I had on my agenda. So I just kind of open it up to questions either by microphone or with the chat stream.
Yeah, Ron. So are you going to call the for Gallatin County to see about practicing on
Yeah, I've gotten a couple emails from Matt Kelly for my professional life that I need to email him back this weekend. Okay. So he's looking for my response anyway, so I'm happy to do it for our guys in Gallatin County. I know, I'm curious, Scott Wolf was on the call earlier. I think we got a couple Livingston folks on the call. They're Park County. Scott, if you're still on, what's your read on Park County over there? He's on. I don't know if he's still muted, but or anybody else over in Livingston.
Hey, to kick in again. So would you just be texting us or emailing us by tomorrow? So that I would like it Monday since we own it.
I don't know if Scott will get back to me before Monday though, but I'll try it.
Fantastic. Okay. So in regards to us practicing Monday, should I wait to hear from you?
Yeah, you should wait to hear green light with county health. I think we will be because he's kind of fallen in line with what the governor's telling us.
Okay. Right on. So I'll just look forward to hearing from you on that.
Yeah, and I think
Ron,
that's consistent with what Russ Nelson was wanting to. So who was chiming in there?
It's Scott Wolf. We know that our facilities open, our ballpark is a city-run park, and we are trying to contact our health department today to see if we're cleared to start practice next week. And one of our board members is the director of emergency operations. He's taking the lead on that. So I'll let you know as soon as we know.
Perfect. Good. Good. Scott Sparks. Scott, why don't you go ahead and unmute and kind of, you've been chatting a lot there. You've got a lot of good input. Why don't you open up your mic and, oh, he doesn't have a mic. Okay. Yeah, you guys can read his inputs there. So then, Johnny, we'll get meeting time set up for the A stuff too for next week. But I think we just want to do weeklies for a while here with this stuff.
Fantastic. Yeah, that works.
Double A guys are going at 7. Maybe I think we can be running 2 meetings at the same time, so maybe we'll try to figure that out and run our A stuff for 7 o'clock on Sunday as well.
Perfect.
Craig Struble, what are you hearing from other states, other umpire pools around us?
Most of the guys I've talked to that umpire have pretty much thrown in the towel for their season, but a lot of them are from out of Washington. I did have Craig Mills was set up to come here, but they pulled most of his stuff. He doesn't do much of the Legion stuff right now, but all of his high school ball and that. But I mean, they're all in the same boat, just kind of waiting and see how things are going, see what direction they'll go.
Right. So one other thing I forgot to bring up, we fully expect that each team may have families who don't want their kids playing. And I'd be shocked if we didn't have that going on. And they certainly will have the right to do that. And there should be no repercussions for those kids coming back next year and trying out for your teams. It's kind of speaks for itself, but we need to give them that opportunity, and you need to be communicating as programs to your parents very closely right now through all this. And I think a lot of you guys are already doing that, and I know you're doing Zoom meetings and all that, which is all great, but we just can't stress it enough that we be out there doing that with our parent groups. But feedback I've gotten around here, at least, is that the parents are supportive of what we're trying to do. Our Legion the Legion program overall is supportive of what we're at least trying to set into motion here. And I certainly hope we can get a season in and make it work for everybody.
Ron, this is Scott Wolf. I'm glad you brought that up because that's our biggest concern is we have limited numbers to begin with, and if kids decide not to play, so since everybody's on the call, take the opportunity for the Bozeman and Belgrade coaches, if you cut players that would potentially will still want to play because you just have too many and you can direct them towards Livingston, we would appreciate it.
And there's a few teams that aren't on this meeting. I don't see Alan or anybody from Anaconda. I have no idea what their numbers will do through all this. So we may lose teams altogether, and that's the reality as well. We just have to adjust our conference schedules as best we can, but I expect that stuff's going to happen too. We've been, and the other thing that, everybody kind of blows through the tournaments. Yeah, let's blow them all up. But we've got a lot of B teams, and we've had 22 or 3 kind of consistently. Those guys kind of live in the tournament world for their games. So it's kind of difficult to eliminate all those B tournaments and think they're going to get much of a conference thing in there. And yeah, it's Class B, but for a bunch of those kids, it's the baseball they got. So got to keep the B stuff in mind too as we go through this. And they really don't have a strong voice in any of this, but a lot of those kids do play in those tournaments. And you guys run a bunch of good ones across the state that are Class B tournaments. So. Any other closing thoughts or feedback or anything we need to be doing different or not?
My only closing thoughts is conduct your practices this week as if a lot of people are watching, a lot of people driving by and saying, hey, what the heck's going on in those fields? And you got to know there's a lot of citizens out here. They're going to be calling the cops saying, hey, they're not following directives and stuff like that. So just be careful, be mindful, as if a lot of eyes are watching you guys. That's all I got.
And on the calling the cops question, it's not a bad idea to let them know what's going on. You know, your city halls or whatever, to let them know. But Carl's exactly right. We are going to be under a lot of scrutiny on this. And just because we sit up here and say, yeah, let's get started, your communities, they don't know or care about that stuff. So. So I just got an email from Bjorn. Apparently, I went to the wrong email address. I had a few of those. I think we got most of them cleaned up. But like I said earlier, if all this works right, the recording should be available, and I'll put it up online so coaches like Bjorn, who's with Tri-County Cardinals, he can pull it down and listen to it as he it's time. Yeah, one of my assistants is chief of police, so we're good. I like that, Scott Sparks. So I wish they all were. So I don't have anything else to add. I just want to thank you all for your time. I think this has been a kind of a successful experiment as to how well this would all work. And I feel better about going forward that we can accommodate these meetings, which will be great for our program. And I don't have anything else to add. Gary White or Jeff Nelson, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to throw in here?
Nope, just be monitoring the situation. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
And Ron, we are planning on the official start date for games is May 22nd. Is that what you're kind of thinking?
That's what we've come away with from this meeting. We're still got to wait till phase 2. I think there'll be more discussion on that. Carl's nodding his head yes. And so I think there's more to come on that. But
yeah, lots more to come. I was nodding my head saying that that's tentatively where we're going. Nothing set in stone.
Yeah. But I really do appreciate all your feedback in the chats and verbally, and it's been really helpful, and I appreciate everybody's time on this. So I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting here, and we'll get the recording up, and we'll be getting back to you with emails on kind of round 2 of this and go from there. So, and we'll be talking to you. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, Ron.
Hey, Ron, where'd you say that that form was for that you showed us earlier? Where would that be?
Yeah, I gotta shine that up a little more, and then I'll make it available to you guys, and we will follow through with that. You got to do your Form 2s, Tony, which is just the usual, and this will be in addition to that. It doesn't replace your Form 2s, but I think it's a useful thing for us to have you do those. So.
Okay, perfect.
All right. See you, Claire.
Hey, Ron, I wasn't paying attention. Did you say you're putting that form on, for the new medical deal on the website?
Yeah, I'll put it on the website and then we'll email it around as we do these meeting notifications. I gotta do a little more work on it. I just got the thing Friday kind of late.
All right, that sounds good. Claire should come to these meetings more often. I'll send Claire to these meetings. She doesn't argue as much as me.
No doubt, no doubt.
Thanks, Ron. Have a good day.
Yeah, thanks, guys.